Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Thomson doing another Facebook Live. If someone could just kind of chime in on the chat box and let me know that I'm going through, that would be fantastic. It says I'm live in the corner, but I never trust these sorts of things. Okay, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Alyssa. So just to start off, I actually kind of have a long kind of laundry list of questions that I've received over the last week and a half. So I'm going to kind of go through these so people can hold off on the questions in the chat box a little bit, because I think I might answer most of them in this original presentation. But as always, I'll start off with reminding people this is a Facebook Live, is an interactive piece for people to interact. So I'm constantly trying to look at comments and make formulate answers and give them. I will be completely honest with you in the fact that I am exhausted. I'm on my third or fourth night of about 4 or 5 hours of sleep. So you're going to have a lot of ums and pauses in here. That's just the way it is. I think that's the fourth or fifth pause you've already heard. I will apologize to that. The police, if you could give me a little bit of a break, that would be fantastic. In general, this process has been, or is currently still, hellacious. There are no easy answers. There's no way that the school system can come up with answers that is going to satisfy everybody in the community, parents, students, faculty. There are no answers that solve all of the issues. And I go back to thinking that education has been pretty similar for over 100 years, 120 plus years. And the format is the same. There's an expectation for how it works, and this pandemic and the safety requirements we have to use have totally thrown that right out the window. Crumpled it right up and thrown it right over your shoulder. So we need to remember that. And I know that schools do a lot of things for our society, including providing consistent care for children. And it's tough. Not that that's not important, but we need to make sure that the health and safety of everybody is paramount first, childcare second or third, and I'll kind of come back to that. One thing I've always done as an educator is try to make decisions with my students in mind first. As an administrator, my students and my faculty in mind. But that's really the focus point that I'm coming from. Not that other pieces are not important, but I got into education to do well for my kids. Right now, the COVID rates are low, and it's probably the best time we're going to have to get some face-to-face time with our students, but we can do that safely. We're coming up with a reopening plan, and I think a lot of people at home are confusing that with that's what we're going to do next year. We are going to be moving back and forth between remote, hybrid, and maybe someday full in-person school. Whether full in-person school can happen this year, I don't know. We'll see. I'm hopeful, maybe in the late spring. People have asked when we started talking mainly about the hybrid model, how come full in-person is not a possibility, and I have discussed that several times, but I will go back to it. This process first involved, late in June, a feasibility study. We were required to go through and study and measure and look at what our facilities were, what capacity we had. When we looked at all of our students coming back, we were at 3 feet or less in our overcrowded, older buildings. I'll give you an example. At the middle school, because we cannot use interior rooms, it is not possible. So to safely bring students back to school, all of them, 100% in school, would require less than 3 feet in many cases, especially at the high school, okay? And we would be far less than that at the middle school. And if you will recall, a lot of our elementary schools have got activities running in what is essentially hallways, cordoned off with bookshelves and things. It is a space problem. And, I'm more than willing to look at a lot of things, but I'm really not willing to go, at this point, to go 3 feet with our students with a virus that we are still discovering a lot about. So the another question that I've gotten is, well, how will we know if we should continue in doing some face-to-face or not? The state is supposed to come out with some guidelines, some metrics that we're supposed to use to measure with that. In a meeting that I had with the commissioner today, he showed a graphic from Johns Hopkins, and Massachusetts is one of 8 or 9 states in the entire country that has rates and metrics low enough that reopening is recommended from one of the best scientific hospitals and universities in the country. We do have safety protocols around cleaning. We are talking about PPE and layers of protection to make sure we're keeping people safe. We did a lot of work this spring in June, pre-buying those materials, pre-buying Chromebooks, pre-buying technology so that we would have it for September, and we do. That was a focus in June, was to make sure that we were at the front end of making sure that we had the equipment. We have protective equipment, 3 months worth of sanitation supplies and protective equipment even before we open the schools. And the plan is to keep 3 months going. You use a month, you buy a month. Use a month, buy a month. That's being fiscally responsible. We're not buying for the whole year, because if we're in full remote at some point for an extended period of time, we wouldn't need all of those supplies. So we're going to be asking families to bring in masks, to kids to wear masks, kids to wash their hands. We're going to have hand washing, sanitation stations, hand sanitizer, the whole bit. But we are asking families to come in with a mask that covers the nose and mouth properly, cloth mask, and to have an extra, have a spare, and to wear them. There will be mask breaks. Those will be outside or at a distance of. Hopefully, the plan is to have them all outside. Obviously, if it's you have a hurricane, we're not going to be outside. But and those will be at 6 feet or more distance, so that we can have those mask breaks. And obviously, younger kids will have more mask breaks than older kids. But that's a layer of procedure that we're still working on. So the process, for this feasibility, so we're required by the state to look at all 3 models, and they basically divvied it up to remote, a hybrid of half in, half working from home, and an all-in model. When we did that, we do not have the space. We do not have the capacity in our transportation department to transport all of those kids at once, because we can only put 24 on a bus instead of 71. When you look at all those factors, with the current state where we are with social distancing, everyone coming to school is not a safe option. Truly, I truly wish it was, but it's not. So if there is a vaccine, if there is an effective treatment, if those criteria for safety change, then that full in-person becomes more of a probability. Do I see that happening this fall? No. Maybe in the spring. Hopefully by this time next year, we are not having these kinds of conversations. So we're developing a reopening plan, a model we would like to start with. That does not mean that full remote will not be part of our experience in school this year. I'm going to repeat that. That does not mean that full remote, kids at home, like we were last spring, is not a possibility or probability at times for the school year. Why? Because we might have a kid who was exposed, or an exposure in a classroom. We have to close that classroom. We have to close that school. So it will be a classroom by classroom and a school by school decision in most cases. If the overall uptick and metrics rise to a level, then we would go full remote. So the charge that I've given the administrative team and the task force comprised of administrators and teachers to look at these problems has been to build a model where we can flex between all 3. Because the last thing we want to do is spend weeks waiting to rearrange everything, and that's what we're trying to do. It's not perfect. So when parents say, well, I'm worried about working, you might get a call the night before, much like a snow day, that says, I'm sorry, your child needs to be remote, at least for the next 3 days. It might be longer. Okay, that is a possibility. The other thing when we're building this is that we are trying to keep cohorts of children together. We're trying to keep cohorts of children together so that we can accurately and quickly contact trace, again, sorry, exhaustion, all right, to notify if there is an exposure or an issue, okay, and to keep that localized. If you don't do that, it becomes a larger problem, okay? So as you can understand, it really is a huge undertaking, and it's not that we haven't tried, but every question and answer is like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. Schools were built to be efficient, to be as inexpensive as possible, to use resources wisely. There's not a lot of extra wiggle room in there. So because of that, it is difficult. Schools are complex. There's a lot of things that go on in schools. Another question that I received is, why aren't we looking at AM and PM? So if you look at the schedules, which were shared last night, excuse me, let me grab a sip of tea here. You saw that we're looking at the high school doing a grab-and-go lunch, go home, and do remote when they get home. The reason for that is that serving lunch for over 1,000 students in a timely fashion, so that you can still, all we'd be doing is lunch. It would be so disruptive to what we're doing. So if we went AM and PM with other kids trying to leave, we don't have enough buses to do that, okay? So that's one piece. The other piece is that we are seriously looking at a staggered start. So in other words, kids coming maybe on 20-minute or 30-minute waves into the school and 20 to 30-minute waves exiting the school. We have to work at traffic patterns, drop-off spots, multiple entry points. So by the time you get everybody in, you're not going to have much learning time to turn it all around, get them all home, and pick up the second group. Okay, it's just not a capacity that we have. So another question that I've gotten is about IEPs and significant needs. So we will be in contact with you. We have to build the model first to determine how we're going to deliver all the services. So I'm going to ask you to be patient. But if your child is in a substantially separate program, they will be coming to school 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, a week, probably have half a day on Wednesday as remote, but that is still being developed and might be a little different depending on the program, okay? If your child is an inclusion student getting support in a classroom, they're probably going to be on that hybrid, 2 days in, 3 days out. That's a general topic right there. But just be patient. We will contact you, but really right now, the next step is to figure out what the schedule looks like, what the staffing looks like, and then we can contact people. But the services that you have for your child's IEP or the accommodations you have for your child's 504 will still be there. Some of them might be on remote days, some of them might be in person, but they still will be there. So a lot of questions about what remote learning looks like. So we learned a lot last year. And I do have to say that when I talked to colleagues, we were in a good place because we made a significant investment in technology. We had the Chromebook program. We were cycling Chromebooks down to the elementary schools so that the technology was there. The override passed, and we were able to invest in a lot of tools for teachers to individualize and personalize instruction. But they only really had them for 6 months or so before we were instantaneously, so the comfort level wasn't there. But there's a lot of learning, and I'm very pleased with how our faculty and staff did with really incorporating and learning those skills, and our technology department putting together PD and supporting teachers, even though that really, for a district this size, is understaffed. And I want to thank them as well. But when we look forward, there's two factors going on here. One is that the younger the kid is, the harder it is for them to be on screen and have effective interactions and learning. And the other is that we want more of that, and hopefully at this point, I know at this point, between the training we've offered, the training we're going to be doing this fall, that comfort level is going to increase. So we're looking at a robust remote learning plan that, even in the hybrid, that is mimicking a school day. Now, that does not mean that if someone is on the screen talking to your child all day. Let's be clear on that, because the research is showing 25 or 30 minutes is the max for an elementary school student, and probably for a high school student as well. So what you will see is you will see generalized instruction, you will see students working on engaging activities, and you will see meets and check-ins and things along that line. But it will be more like a school day, not a half a school day that the Commonwealth asked us to start with last March. So in order for education to really work, you have to build relationships. So the advantage we had last year when we were forced to shut down was that those relationships and routines and use of technology had already been started. This year, if we look at it, building those routines, building those, building that opportunity, that investment between teacher and student, if we only start remotely, I fear that's going to be difficult. So it can be done. It's hard. It takes longer, but difficult. It would be faster, easier, more effective. The other piece with the hybrid model is that they are coming in and seeing the teacher that that they're working with, being responsible to, and what have you. The other requirement that the Department of Education is asking for is that attendance is taken and grades are given. So that is a difference from last fall. It's no longer pass-fail. We're no longer talking about just the power standards. We're talking about the standards, and we're talking about regular school day, attendance, and grades. Okay? So we're looking to build relationships, routines, and increase engagement. One thing that we started last spring was talking about how to revamp or tweak our curriculum so it fits better into multiple models, not just an in-person model, but a remote, computer-based model as well. So that has been ongoing. We looked at several models, and I'll go back to the feasibility study. We looked at several models with how to do the hybrid. Originally, we were looking at a week on, week off sort of thing. We did talk a little bit about AM, PM, and quickly determined that we would lose more time than we would actually gain with that in-person model. So we ended up going back to this 2-day, 3-day scenario. And I know it's not perfect for families, but again, for students, for safety, it is probably the better model. At least in our opinion, it's the better model, because we have the cohorts separated. We have a day in between when cleaning can happen, and there's a break between the two groups. Again, helping out with the separation and the and cohorting and shortening windows if we do need to contact trace. The other thing is that, especially at the younger levels, it was really thought about, is having a whole week without seeing your teacher in person, is that really good for our younger students or our most vulnerable students? So that's part of why we went with the 3-day, 2-day with everybody remote on Wednesday. The other thing is that the other districts around us, and most of the districts in the state, are looking at that model. And you need to remember that not everybody lives and teaches in Norwood. And if our model is somewhat similar, hopefully that helps make sure our teachers are with us. So there's a few other things we have to work on. We have to work on transportation and how that is going to work. We're hoping that we're going to be able to use multiple runs, that we'll be able to, that will be an increased cost, but we will do that. And we're not going to have to limit who goes on the bus, but at some point we will probably talk about a last day to sign up so we can get our bus routes done. So I would give you a little forewarning about that. So if sorry, I lost my notes here. So I'm going to go back to the remote aspect. So all instruction, all that remote instruction, again, similar tools, the Google Hangout and Google Classroom. We have actually invested in the enhanced version of that has like breakout rooms, much like Zoom does. We are looking at a one sign-in sort of scenario, so you don't have to remember, lots of different passwords and that sort of thing. I think at this point, our staff has gotten pretty good at using those tools. And that, again, as I said before, is going to mirror our regular classroom. And again, hopefully we're going to be able to start with the hybrid, and we'll be able to stay in the hybrid for an extended period of time. But there is the chance, someone asked about quarantine, a child ends up with symptoms while we're investigating that, while they're being tested, contact trace, and then, we would have to have that classroom go full remote. If we start mixing classrooms, that's going to be problematic. So, that's kind of why we're looking at this model. So the other questions, a lot of other questions have come up about the Remote Learning Academy. So the state is requiring that each district offer a remote-only option. So parents would choose to engage through the schools and have their children learn remote only. So parents do have a choice. The choice is you can jump on with the school and, we're going, hybrid or remote, depending on the situation where we are. 2 days in, 3 days remote. But the other option is that you're choosing to not walk into a building and to do the education remotely. And part of that is that we do have students, we do have families that are immunocompromised, and those families are, have to make a very difficult choice for the long-term health and safety of their family. We want to make sure those folks are taken care of and education happens. So this fully remote experience is going to mimic what we're doing in our regular schools. We're still working out some of that. A lot of it, how it is actually articulated, will depend a little bit on our numbers that sign up. And there's basically two options. Either we're staffing it, perhaps with teachers who have similar health issues, or families have health issues, and or the state has just come out with 2 different online platforms that could fill in. Although I'm kind of thinking that that would be probably more towards the high school, where we are very specialized. But again, we don't know until we have people sign up. How many people sign up for that will make a difference. So, and you can switch out of it, but I am going to ask the school committee to set a time period, probably of staying in for at least a quarter of the year, about 45 school days, before a switch is enabled. And that's, it's going to be a thing where we have to find a spot for them. So, and people are asking, well, will I be with the kids from this school or with that school? And basically, I'm looking at the Remote Learning Academy, the RLA, being its own little building or subgroup and covering kids from all over the district. So we would have to find where that child would fit back in their home school and what that does. So in the remote hybrid, we are looking to be at or very close to 6 feet between students. Students, again, would have to wear face masks, and the school committee last night did vote that all students would wear a face mask. I see preschoolers in the grocery store all the time wearing face masks as possible. Obviously, that would be, a developmental piece, and the you have to be flexible with that. And again, it's a safety issue. We want to make sure that we have these layers of protection, starting with face masks, starting with hand sanitizing, starting with cleaning, starting with distancing. So we've got multiple pieces to make sure, and I think everybody, no matter what their age, needs to join in that. And just as a side, The Commissioner of Education has recommended that everybody wear face masks, and it is a requirement on the buses that everybody wears a face mask. You will see assigned seats everywhere, buses, lunch tables, classrooms, and again, that's all about being able to trace, if there is a reason to trace, who would be exposed. Okay? So the Remote Learning Academy, so basically you would sign up for that. It is an option. It's not for everybody. So, and then, we would, and it's a fully remote experience. It will either be, Norwood teachers doing Norwood stuff the way we do it in Norwood, or it might be a combination of an online platform and a teacher from Norwood facilitating it. That's still yet to be determined. There's still some research and some working out on that online platform. It just came out yesterday. And again, there are going to be live teachers in the Remote Learning Academy. There is going to be grades and attendance taken. So keep that in mind. Now, a confusion people have is that they keep calling the Remote Learning Academy homeschooling. It's not homeschooling. Homeschooling is where the parent is taking over the role, all the educational responsibility. Okay, so the parent has got to provide a plan to the district. I have to approve the plan. There has to be assessments and reports sent into the school department, and you're not using the Norwood Public Schools curriculum, okay, which is based on the state curriculum. So in that case, yes, they're home, but you're managing, designing, and assessing the education. The other piece of that is that if parents choose that, we get money from the state. It's called Chapter 70. We get money from the state based on how many are enrolled in our schools. If you're enrolled in the Remote Learning Academy, you're enrolled in our schools, and that enrollment on October 1 affects our funding for the following year. So I'm not trying to necessarily talk people out of homeschooling. I just want people to realize that there is a difference. Remote Learning Academy, we're still managing the learning, the expectations. They're doing it at home. Homeschooling, you're managing it, you're assessing, you're reporting out on it, and the parent holds it. Another piece that I've heard a little bit about is fiscal responsibility, and this is expensive, and how are we using the override money, and all of these sorts of things. So let me get, that this is going to cost more. Yes, it is going to cost more. We're looking at more transportation. We're looking at more staff. We're looking at outside learning environments. We've already invested in masks and sanitizer. We've invested in Chromebooks and technology to do this work. So a lot of that, I will tell you right now that a lot of that, there's a lot of grant work done this year. There was a lot of pre-planning done in June to make sure we were well positioned to do whatever we needed to do come September. So the first thing I'm going to say is there's nothing fiscally responsible about trying to do regular activities in the wake of a global pandemic. Okay? The $1 trillion bailouts that have come from the federal government, those are not fiscally responsible. Increasing unemployment, $600 a week, is not fiscally responsible. That is all money that's being spent up front to try to keep on the path we're at. And this is a very similar situation where, in order to continue some semblance of regular school and working will cost more. Now, with that being said, we already have over $800,000 that we've received since June in grants to help pay for some of this. We are keeping our fingers crossed that the next federal stimulus includes some increased money to help us with staffing and transportation with this. But ultimately, it is an entirely possibility, much like the space does not work in Norwood, that the money might not work and we might be in a full remote. So I'm going to be fully honest with that. That's not where we're hoping to go, or where I'm hoping we're going to go. But besides that being a possibility, it is also a fiscal possibility as well. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that the federal government does step up and help us through this crisis. And word is that is going to happen. So and there's a lot of things, fiscal responsibility. I mean, the investment that we made and the town made in food security is not necessarily, being fiscally conservative. Um, but we're committed to making sure our schools are safe and that we have a chance for face-to-face, interactive learning going on. The other question I've gotten is, well, the override money. Now we're spending the override money on this. So I just want to go back to the override. If you remember, 75-80% of that ask for the schools was to not cut things, not close things. The other 1.5, 1.6 million was to invest in curriculum instruction. That has not changed. We are still looking to invest in curriculum instruction. We have a new ELA curriculum coming in this year. We will continue to look at our social studies and our science curriculum going forward, and the year after, math is on the piece. And being able to keep up with these tools that we were using to personalize learning, and now we're using in a remote setting. So, I just want people to realize that it's, yes, it would be less expensive to just go all remote. I wouldn't have to hire any extra staff. I wouldn't have to, pay for extra bus runs, all those sorts of things. But if we're looking at what the research is very clear that especially high needs populations really did not do well and did not progress the way we would like them to do in that learning environment. So we need to kind of keep that in mind. So next step. So someone asked ETA. So the next step is we are finishing up our plan. We're in the process of writing it as we speak. That is going to be presented to the school committee on Monday evening. I am hopeful that we will get final approval on that, submit that to the state. From there, and this is the difficulty, folks. In order to do the next steps we need to have which direction we're going in. So once we have that plan approved, that determines, what we're going to do from there. And it basically, for those at home, it's about who's going to do the remote learning academy. There will be a deadline and a date and a form to do that. Staff will need to let us know if there is a medical reason why they cannot perform in-person instruction. Transportation, we'll need to know who is looking to ride a bus and how that will work. We need to look at assigning staff, assigning students, transportation routes, and the cost associated with that. Once all those pieces start to come in, then we can really get nitty-gritty on additional staff costs, what those will be. And, a lot of those come down to the plan is, and a good portion of it is at the elementary level, where we're going to have basically team taught, 2 in-person teachers and a remote teacher, and having the staff to do that. Because you can't, talk about trying to do 2 things at once. You can't be live teaching and then also worrying about the kids on the internet over here at the same time. That just doesn't work. The school calendar, the training, the state has agreed to allow us to go down to 170 days, which means that the beginning of school would be about the 16th to the 17th of September. But we're going to be training and making sure teachers understand all the safety measures and protocols, all the new online tools, all of the processes and moving people in and out. It's very well from that training and from that next step, we might talk about staggering how we start our hybrid. Not everybody might be hybrid on the 17th of September. We might have some people starting remote. Just so we can see how drop-off goes. And again, because this is all new. Remember, last 120 years, you've been perfecting what we've been doing and changing slightly what we've been doing. Now we're trying to redo everything. We will be working on a family frequently asked questions FAQ page. That probably will be together in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. The other thing is extended day, and we have started conversations about this. So again, that cohorting piece. So we're trying to keep cohorts as together as possible. So it doesn't really fundamentally make sense to have a cohort and then have them all jump on a bus, a mixed cohorts from all different elementary schools, and go over to the Savage for extended day. So, how do we do that? Do we actually have the staffing to do that? We might actually have to hire more staff. The numbers, again, the distancing increases the space, and the number decreases the numbers in there. So that might be a possibility. We might have to go with a little bit of a shorter day. And people are asking, well, why would you need to go to a shorter day? Because we need to clean the school every night. And again, that's a staffing issue. And if you delay when you start the cleaning, especially when there's more cleaning to be done, that is a piece. And I'm just going to flip back to cleaning really quick. So, the custodians are in the process of being trained on cleaning. So we're talking about cleaning touch surfaces on a regular basis. There was a question about, during the summer, it was every time a person used the bathroom, someone had to clean it. That has changed since that initial guidance came out in the middle of June. It's not that frequently, but it is more frequent than it normally would be during a school day. But those high touch surfaces, handles, door handles, railings, and those sort of things are supposed to be cleaned regularly during the day, and now those protocols are being finalized, and the staff is being trained. So then at night, you're doing all the other cleaning, the wiping down of desks, all of that sort of thing. And then the spraying of rooms is going to be happening nightly, with an extra spray, if you will, or disinfecting, deep clean sometimes it's called, on that Wednesday in between, perhaps over the weekend, Friday night as well, so that we are ensuring that we're not getting things moving from one cohort to the other. The other thing I want people to realize is that the school that the kids left, with the close desks and the carpets and that sort of thing. And last night on the slideshow, you saw some of the pictures of our elementary school, very stark, spread out, everybody's facing the same direction. Lunchrooms will be the same way. We're talking about moving desks into most of them, sitting by class in rows, and it has to be 6 feet because you can't eat lunch with a mask on. Food being pre-packaged and delivered. So all of these things, the school will be a different piece than it was before. So with that, I have a couple other questions that I got as an email, and then I'm going to go through and see where we are with the chat box over here. So one of the questions, if we choose Remote Learning Academy and the kids are not paired with regular teachers and we come back in January because there's a vaccine, will they be able to return? So yes, we have to be able to bring them back. We're looking at that quarter signing. You have to stay for at least a quarter, and that gives us a little time to figure out and rearrange and get furniture in and all those other sorts of things. But the idea that we would, even with the trials right now, they're really not destined to even be up for approval until January. Then you have to get them out, and people have to be vaccinated. So January is overly optimistic. I'd love it if it happened. I would love if we had our population vaccinated in late spring and we're doing in person, moving from a hybrid to in person. We might have to rejuggle where kids are and look at that. But right now we're looking at school-based hybrid. So it's at the Oldham, it's Mrs. Jones, Mrs. King, and Mrs. Garrett. Those are the third grade team. They are going to team teach. Two of those teachers will have half of a class in person, and Mrs. King will be doing remote with all the kids who are in the other cohort. But they will be collaborating on those Wednesdays, coordinating what they're doing, talking about the kids, talking about expectations, talking about interventions for those kids on those Wednesdays. So Wednesday will be partially a remote for all and teacher-led piece, and then the other half of the day it will be kind of project-based and work-based on their own, so that collaboration piece can happen. So just kind of keep that in mind. So who will clean and disinfect the bathrooms? I think I already addressed that, but that will be the custodians will be doing it. It's not between each use. It's less than that. And mask breaks, This is the other question. And again, outside 6 feet. Just making sure I got all of these. Masks are required for all. That was a school committee vote last evening with that new policy. And I think that's it. We are they're talking about the other question was parents who send their kids. So there's going to be a protocol, much like when you go to a restaurant. It asks you, you're supposed to answer all these questions before you go in. We will do that. We will be asking people to regularly take their temperature. We do have to rely on people making good decisions. Again, this is not something we should be fooling around with. But parents are going to have to be responsible. And again, it's not just you and yours, it's we and us. So, all right, so I'm going to go over to the chat box, which means I have to try to read, think, and answer, which in my current state is a little bit of a challenge. So I think I don't know whether does it start at the bottom and go to the top, or does it start at the top and go to the bottom? All right, so I think it starts at the top. All right, so are face shields okay in the place of a mask? No. Masks are masks. Masks actually surround the mouth. If you look at any people that are using a face shield, it's in conjunction with the mask to add another layer of safety. If a student wanted to wear a shield with their mask, I think we could consider that. We might look at shields for some of our special populations, especially under the autism spectrum. But as a general piece, that is not the case. If you decide hybrid, then decide to go to the Learning Academy, is that change instant? I'm not sure. It depends on. So this is my fun game. So you spend 31 years in education. You think you have most of the answers, and then you're thrown into a global pandemic, and everything's different. So it might be faster depending on what we go with at that grade level and how much room there is. So moving from a classroom to an online academy, so let's say 3rd grade, and we're running it with our own teachers, and we've only got 20 in there, so one more is not a big deal. That might be able to do a little faster, but we're kind of asking people to stick to that quarter piece. And again, that's got to be approved by the school committee, but that might be faster. Moving back into a cohort and back into a place where we would need to add a desk and respace and see where the room is and all that, that might be a little longer. But that, again, depends on how many are there. I think it starts at the bottom. So I'm going to go down to the bottom. Here we go. So a question about cohorts. We are committed to putting families in the same cohort. I would love to say we'd be able to put friends and neighbors in the same cohort. I don't know if that's a realistic possibility simply because of the time frame we're working in. But we are, so, and I think I said a couple Facebook posts, if you're a mixed family or your children have a different last name or whatever it might be, because we're kind of talking about the alphabet, which is not always the case. So, please, please make sure that if you have a question on that, you reach out to your principal. Not this week, though. Okay, I got them pretty busy. So, trying to. So the school committee is voting on the proposed plan on Monday. The school committee meeting is at 5 o'clock. All right, so conversation between. Yeah, we are not required. Question about taking temperatures. That is not a requirement for schools. And again, moving kids in and out, it's a little different moving 50 kids than it is moving 250 kids. Or 125 kids, but we do have the thermometers, the instant read thermometers, should we need them. Okay. So is this meaning Norwood is starting with hybrid? That's a good question. That is my recommendation, and that is the administration's recommendation to the school committee. Part of that is that it would give our students a chance to have some face-to-face time and start with face-to-face time. Now, with that, I say with a caveat. If you will recall, last March, the superintendent canceled school 3 days before the governor because of the numbers going up. So those metrics are important. We have a tremendous relationship with our Board of Health in Segal Reese. And if that changes between now and September, the middle of September, then we would not start with a hybrid. I'm hoping it is not. I'm hoping the current little uptick that we're seeing changes and trends back downward. We're still within the safe zone, according to science, or safer zone is probably a better way of putting it. But that would be the recommendation, is that we're building it from a perspective of wanting to start with a hybrid. Okay? But that vote by the school committee is happening on Monday night. Thank you. So one person has, you go to the doctor's office, they take your temp because it's one at a time. You're going to have buses getting off in multiple places. It doesn't mean we will not choose to do that in certain instances or spot check. So we will, go with that. So thanks for answering the questions. You're welcome. Yes, I am exhausted. Hopefully I'm making sense still. It is, again, square pegs, square holes. And trust me, as a parent, I would love to say, oh, we got all this and we got all that and you can do this. And, if you think back, I've been, dedicated to try to expand extended day. To think about limiting right now is really heartbreaking. But again, it would be more heartbreaking to have someone in our school community get sick. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that does not happen. So talking about parents cannot support remote learning capacity. So what I am, again, that revamping of the curriculum. So what happens in a classroom right now, especially elementary class, it's not like when you and I were in school and the teacher was up there and you sat and you did worksheets. It very much is interactive. So we're going to be, to the best ability through a remote, we're going to be recreating, mirroring that, so that there is that short bit of instruction. They're doing the work. They're working on long-term projects in between, and there's check-ins with their teachers. So that parent having to help them get in, and this is another reason for, that's face-to-face time. So the students are used to finding where, Freckle is and know where the starting point is. And, they have that routine built and have that opportunity to have routines built in a face-to-face format. Yeah, so a lot of questions about, waiting to go hybrid, to start with remote. And I'm, and not that I'm a medical doctor, but, my first degree is in biology, and I'm concerned that if we wait, especially as we approach, flu season, we might lose an opportunity to really build those relationships. That doesn't mean we're not going to be thoughtful and systematic to getting to that hybrid. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we're just going to jump in. We need to look at our processes and procedures and say, okay, should we practice with a small group and then add, another grade and then add another grade? But I don't want to wait months before I have kids. If we can have kids in front of and working with teachers, because I'm concerned that if we wait too long, we kind of lose that opportunity. So, all right. So this is jumping around. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for thanking us. So hopefully that has answered most of the questions. So what happens from here? So we're in the process of getting this into, the reopening document, which then has to be filed with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed and posted on our website. There will be a lot more detail with how things are going to happen in that written plan. There will be some things that are not in that written plan, like bus schedules, staffing levels. So some of those things will not be in there because we need to get to the point where we have people enrolling and signing up and doing buses and deciding remote learning academy and real numbers, so we can have real calculations and real solutions. We did a lot of surveying. We had several subcommittees in our task force, as I mentioned before, looking at different aspects, communicating with families, communicating with teachers, looking at different options to get solutions. But ultimately, it comes down to actually having hard numbers and people committed to doing these. And it's hard to ask for a commitment until you can read and see what the plan is. So you will see sample schedules. You saw some last night. I'm hoping that tomorrow I can get my slides corrected in a few places and posted here on Facebook and also on the district website, so people can take a look at them. And then we will hopefully that'll answer some of the questions that that you might have. And then once we get that out, I will try to do another Facebook Live and answer more questions. Hopefully, at that time I'll have the capacity to get out forms. People give me questions ahead of time, and we will go from there. So last thing I'll say is a lot of people talk about the science. There's some old science out there that people are still going back to. This plan or ask from the governor and the commissioner to focus on in-person learning is based on the latest. I won't say the last, but that children are far less affected. Children do not transmit. Children do not get as sick as. So again, that's the latest. That could change. I had someone the other day bring up Georgia, and there was a picture that I saw of them not social distancing and not designing their schools to make sure that students were separated. There were pictures of students in class not wearing masks. These sorts of things. That is not what we are going to do. We are going to follow the model that we have here in Massachusetts, which has quickly turned around what could have been a very bad situation back in March into a positive situation, and hopefully we can keep it that way. But that really depends on everybody wearing masks, everybody staying socially distanced, and just being smart about what we're doing and prioritizing what's really important. So hopefully, I don't see any other questions that I have not gotten to, although I only think it shows me a few at a time. One thing about the kindergarten. So let me just talk quickly about the kindergarten. The kindergarten is going to go with a slightly different model, and part of that is their staffing with an aide and a in the age of the kids. In that the kindergarten, the whole class. This is my dog has decided she wants to play right now. So the whole class of kindergartners will come in. They'll be spread out between two rooms. Enough. So they will be spread out between two rooms, and the aide and the teacher will move back and forth. The teacher will go teach. The aide will come in and help facilitate the activities and that sort of thing. And then when they go and have their remote days, that same teacher and aide will be doing that part of it as well. And thinking about, the age of the kid, that would be beneficial to just have those same people and not switching around a lot. At the preschool, again, to keep that distancing, and we're really looking at 6 feet across the board, not the 3 feet. And I know the WHO is talking about 3 feet is enough. We understand people's comfort level with that, and our own comfort level with that. So we're looking to keep 6 feet or very close to 6 feet. At the preschool, we might not be able to have the same number of model students we've had before, but that really depends on what choices are made and how we're doing it. So playgrounds, again, it's that cross cohorting, and a classroom is a cohort. We might have scheduled times when they can use play structures. So it's that part. So how we sit in the classroom, how we do recess, how we do lunch, how we move in hallways will be drastically different. Again, because we're prioritizing safety. So I just want to be clear on that. A lot of questions. And I had mentioned potting before. So unfortunately, we have to get moving. Because once we can get the placements done, then you can start doing the potting you need to do. So that's that is the thing, and we're fully aware of that, folks. We're moving as fast as we can, and I know that everybody starts thinking about next fall, usually the beginning of June, and how they're going to do it. And unfortunately, this process, which has been guided as a statewide process in a totally new environment with all sorts of new information, has made this very difficult for everybody, and we understand that. We do, but keep in mind that if we are endorsed for the hybrid model by the school committee, and we do put that into place, that could change overnight. Your child's classroom could be home for 2 or 3 days, depending, for safety reasons. So, thinking of, unfortunately, we have to separate school from the child care, which I know is not what we've had to do in the past, and I'm sorry we're in that situation. But you can you're just we're gonna have to be flexible, and hopefully everyone's gonna need to be flexible, and everybody's gonna need to help each other's out. So as far as siblings on the same days, that is the hope. It gets a little more difficult at the high school with that, but again, I would make sure we've been talking about alphabet, but alphabet is not the end all and be all. So not this week, but once we have the plan approved, I would urge you to reach out to your principal and make sure that son A Smith and son B Jones should be cohorted together. Okay? Something about older siblings. So we're talking about the high school. Basically, they would come in on any day. They would come in, they would go through, they would do a grab-and-go lunch. They would have a break lunch period. They would go home, and they would have 2 remote classes in that same day. So one thing to think about is if you have a high schooler and you have a 4th grader, the high schooler would be home before the 4th grader is. I don't know if that's helpful or not helpful, but that might be that might be helpful. Okay. All right. So all right. So I'm trying to look back up and see if there's any questions that have come through that. So someone talking about decisions and information. So those surveys were to get a dipstick on where people were and what people were thinking. They were not a commitment. So please don't think that if you said you wanted to go do the remote learning academy, now you're thinking something different. You've signed your life away. We only ask for email addresses and names just to follow up if principals had a question on something. So don't feel that you've painted yourself into a corner, please. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get information out so people can make the best decision. But the best thing we can do is get our plan finalized so people can read it, look at it, and know what what the next steps are, so they can plan, they can assess the safety protocols we have in there to see if they feel safe and what is best for their family. So with that, I will say goodnight. I probably will fall asleep, but I will say goodnight. I appreciate you joining us. Hopefully, I've answered your questions. And again, we'll come back. We'll come back to that, and we'll come back to another. I'm just lost my train of thought. Sorry. So we will come back. We'll do another Facebook Live after that decision is made. Hopefully at that time I'll have a good night's sleep, and we'll try to answer any other questions. There was a question that I saw in there about whether teachers were on the task force. Yes, teachers were invited to be on the task force. Some task forces had more teachers than others. There was another invite that went out. Just teachers were surveyed as to what their preferences were. Questions were culled from teachers, and there's a frequently asked questions document that is going out soon to answer questions that they have as well. And we'll continue to work with them. And as always, they can always call their principal, their assistant principal, and have a conversation. So with that, I wish you all well. Stay safe, stay healthy. Hopefully we'll have some nice, cool air over the next couple weeks and get out and be able to enjoy it while we have these open air experiences, and we'll go from there. Oh, last question: will the school hours change when and if the 2 days when and if the 2 days in school start? We might have to have a staggered start because we might have to run more than one bus route to a school in the morning and after. But if you look at the schedules, you can see that they have kind of like the middle school is doing a shorter Mustang block in the morning and a shorter in the afternoon to kind of do those check-ins and social emotional work and things like that, and we'll replicate that at all the schools. Okay. All right. So so Kim asked whether the nurses have enough PPE. Yes, as I said at the beginning, we bought 3 months worth. We will continue to have 3 months worth in stock. That is the plan going forward. And we will have, there were sample schedules in the school committee last night. And again, my hope is that tomorrow we will get those slides posted on the website in here, so you can go back and you can kind of look at those schedules, get an idea as to what those are. So I'm going to say goodnight, for the 4th time now? Every time I go to say goodnight, I see a question I want to try to answer, but I'm actually going to say goodnight. All right? Take care. Bye-bye.